Hey everyone, so today we have a bunch of podcasters here and we're going to talk about sort of podcasting tips and advice. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi guys, my name is Eric Chen. I'm the host of whyfactorpodcast.com. I talk about the whys and motivations behind people starting a business or their journey or projects that they have, and really the driver behind keeping that passion going.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I interview creatives and entrepreneurs on the blueprint on how they got started in their journeys to hopefully encourage other people to start their own.
All right. Hi everybody, my name is Pan, host of the Everything Real Estate Investing Show, and I interview real estate investors as well as real estate professionals to teach people how to get in the business and how to succeed.
Cool, so we're just going to do a quick discussion about, different podcasting questions. So first, I wanted to ask, why do you guys choose podcasting over blogging, YouTube, and other platforms? So I guess we can just kind of go around.
Yeah, I'll start. So I decided to choose podcasting over other platforms because I've never been too big on YouTube or watching YouTube. And so something myself as a user of podcasts is like something I would listen to on the commute to work. And so it was my favorite platform to learn things, listen to different stories. And so, with my whole entrepreneurial journey, I had the opportunity to go meet other cool business owners, individuals. And so I wanted to just go and discuss with them and be able to share their story out to the world.
I had started my podcast because I was watching interviews on YouTube a lot, and then I realized I should just start interviewing people. So then I just found interesting people that I thought were highlighting the kind of up-and-coming mentality and decided to interview them. I found it really rewarding to give people who normally don't get to do interviews a platform to speak and share their work. And so ultimately, I think that's what I want to do. I always invest in my guests. I really believe that everyone on my show either has done something really amazing or will do something amazing. So I think it's going to be really fun to interview them again in a few years and see where they'll be.
Yeah, that's really cool. Similar to Eric, I actually listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and I read a book talking about how having a podcast gives you the opportunity to be a thought leader, so you can have your own thought leadership platform. Not a lot of people do podcasts in our industry, so it's good to be a little bit unique, and by having your own podcast, it allows you to connect with someone who would normally not talk to you, because it gives them the opportunity to share their message with a lot more people rather than just one person.
Cool, so all right, we're going to do some quick questions about software, equipment. So first, in terms of video and recording software, what do you guys use?
My podcast is still fairly new at this point, so I've been experimenting with a ton of different things. I actually even use this little device here, just the iPhone, and then this little mic to plug in. So it's been really handy to just have this on the go to, if I'm traveling or I'm meeting with people, I can just whip this out and just start recording. And I think a lot of people, they stress out about I need the best equipment. I need, a big mic and all this recording software and a sound engineer. But it's I don't know how to do that, and I'm not going to really pay someone to do that. So I'm just going to plug this in and then just get going. And I basically just slice and dice my stuff on Final Cut Pro. I don't even run it through an audio software right now. But the idea is if you have really good audio recording from the beginning, it makes your job a lot easier.
For online stuff, do you use Zoom, or what do you?
Yeah, so for people that I interview online, I use Zoom conferencing, and it's been pretty helpful because you can have your video side by side, and the audio quality has been pretty good. So I'll take that as a video recording and extract the audio file from there, and then slice and dice it on Final Cut.
So for me, I kind of use a lot of different stuff. So I was using Audacity, and we talked about this. I personally don't like Audacity, but if you're watching this and you use Audacity, you should do whatever feels best for you. So I switched over to GarageBand, and I found it extremely much better for me because I have multiple tracks that I use. So I have a intro song that's my intro song, and I also cut up a clip of a special 1 minute section from the interview, and I put that in the beginning with some underlying sounds. And so there's just kind of different elements, and to actually visualize that, I think GarageBand has just helped me with that, as well as being able to save the project and then basically just swapping out the specific interviews. So creating templates almost in actual GarageBand files. And then if I'm doing remote interviews, I do Google Hangouts. There's ways you can just record your Google Hangouts. And then if I'm doing in person, I use my iPhone 10, and I just set up a tripod for that.
Same here. I use Google Hangouts. It's so easy to integrate it with your Google Calendar. You just send a Gmail invite, and you just need to click one link to join you. And then I use something called OBS, Open Broadcast System, and it allows you to record everything that's on your desktop, and it records the volume coming out as well as the speaker going in. I'm also trying to move into something called Zencaster. Zencaster allows you to record locally from your side and their side. So sometimes when you're talking on Google Hangouts, as you know, sometimes the voice gets all distorted because of internet connections and whatnot. But with Zencaster, it's perfect because it's just from their side and your side. And I use Audacity because I got used to it, but I might check out GarageBand in a little bit.
Cool. How about mics? What do you guys use?
Mics, I use this one on the go. I have a more fancy mic, I think through Audio Technica, that I'll plug in, and I'll use that for recording, through webcam. But yeah, those are basically the two mics that I use right now.
Do you remember the model? Or?
No, I'll just send that to you. AT2020 maybe. I don't know. Plus.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to my mic too, because it is an Audio Technica mic.
Okay.
I think before I bought my lights, my whole setup was like, and before I bought the Zoom H4, it was like $100. So the mic is like under $100. And then I bought like another Amazon mic as a secondary mic for either myself or the guest to use.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I first started, I just had a gamer headset with like headphones and a little thing that goes like this. The problem with it is it didn't have, I'm not a sound guy, so I have no idea. Like pop filter, right? Now the pop filter, so every time I use an S or P, you could hear it a lot. And it was very unpleasant. My friends would be listening to it in the car, and every time they say something, they have to like turn the volume down and turn the volume back up because it was too quiet. So recently I bought a Yeti Pro, and I'm still trying to figure out how to use it, to be honest, because you talk to it not directly, but on the side. So I'm trying to figure out like the positioning and stuff. So still a work in progress.
Yeah, I actually used my gaming headset for a few of my earlier interviews. So I have that in my videos where it looks like I'm just like ready to game.
And like most of my guests, they just use their iPhone headset. It's good enough. So I don't think you should be hung up too much on the equipment if you're just starting.
Cool. And then in terms of, I think, publishing software, is that what it's called? So I know people use Anchor, Buzzsprout, Libsyn. I think there's tons of them. So what do you guys use?
So I currently use Anchor to distribute most of my episodes now. I tried a few of the other softwares even before I started based on recommendations. So I tried using Libsyn and Podbean, but those weren't as user-friendly only because they're actually one of the older platforms that you can use, but compared to like the existing softwares, they're just not as up to date. So the like user interface looks like it's from like Windows 2000, and so it's like it's just too many click around. So I decided to go with Anchor because it's a lot easier to use.
Yeah, I also use Anchor, and I think something that everyone should know when they use Anchor is there's like and I kind of warned Eric about this, is like there's like the potential that Anchor might own your content because they own your RSS feed. And so, obviously it's a little bit concerning because that means that you don't have full ownership over your content the same way if you used a Podbean or a different platform, but Anchor is free. And I guess now that Spotify has acquired Anchor, it's really provided some more legitimacy into knowing that your content is probably going to be safe because it has a huge platform like Spotify behind it.
Very well said. I didn't know anything about what you just said till right now. But yeah, Anchor is great because you put it on one place and distributes to all different platforms for you. So instead of me having to individually go to like Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, you just upload on Anchor and they'll take care of everything for you.
In terms of your concern, do you plan to switch to another software?
So I did my research, and I think what would require a switch would be to actually create like another podcast, like go onto another site, create a whole nother podcast, basically re-upload all my episodes. Mm-hmm. So I'd lose my ratings and my reviews, and then I would have ownership. For me personally, after hearing that Spotify acquired Anchor, I felt pretty confident in the fact that it's going to be fine. Like, it's probably only going to get better, and I think that the analytics have already shown to be better than they previously were, and the bugs are getting worked out too. So I'm excited about it.
I have a question for you actually. So when I first started using Anchor, I thought they would slap on their little like, oh, this podcast may be using Anchor.
Yeah.
And I found out you could turn it off by...
Really? I didn't know that. That's so cool.
All right, cool. So good thing we talked about this. You can turn it off in the settings.
Cool.
And it seemed like the only thing they really have is that little logo on top of your your thing, right? Is that it?
Yeah, from like my understanding of Anchor, that's all they really do is just they put their little icon I mean, it's really cool. And if you're watching this and you know nothing about podcasting, like, you could honestly record your whole first podcast on your phone because they have that built into the software as well.
That's what I did.
Yeah, it's really cool.
They actually tell you to hide in the closet to talk so that the acoustics are good.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, I do have a concern about, because when you put it up, I notice on iTunes, it shows for the website, it goes to Anchor. Like, is there any way to change that or no?
Yeah, I think that's just part of the description, right? That you can edit out.
So like in iTunes, you know how this is an iTunes link, right? Wait, does yours go?
I've gone to his and it says when you click website, it goes to Anchor. So that's why.
Talking about mine or his?
Both of yours.
I think because Anchor is the one that sends it out to iTunes, then when you click the link in iTunes, it goes to Anchor's website. But then throughout in Anchor, it's our website. So I don't know if we can do that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like having a podcast to me is like, I'm trying to keep it as like minimal stress as possible, so I don't worry about all those things.
Yeah. Okay. I have no idea because I don't have a podcast yet, but I am just wondering. So for the next question, in terms of like content, do you guys only focus on interviews, or do you ever do any like tips or tricks or something as like your own episode where you don't talk to other people?
I think for right now, the way I started it was to interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that was basically the theme of it. I do have plans to create content around part of what I do in terms of like helping create products and building brands, and I might integrate that into the episode and have like short form content in there, or I might just have that on something completely different. I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, I was doing when they weren't in person, I was doing a lot of those like kind of like where you have like a picture and then it's like an audio wave. And then you can use headlinerapp.com for that. And that was cool. But then the reason I wanted to do more in-person ones was because I wanted to be able to create micro content that had like both me and the interviewer in it. And so through that, I've just been publishing that a lot on Instagram and LinkedIn. And then I promote primarily on Instagram stories through an app called Mojo.
But do you ever talk like an episode of just your ideas, or is it always with somebody?
Yeah, so I created like a sub-series within my podcast called Real Talk, and the first 3 episodes of that sub-series were just me talking about like lessons I've learned and things I've experienced, and that was like pretty cool. I liked doing it. It was like 7 minutes of me just talking. But then I kind of realized the potential of Instagram live streams and the fact that other than like celebrities, no one in my network was really using them. And I began live streaming, and so I was live streaming for I think like 17 weeks. And then now I've just kind of had to put it on pause because I'm transitioning in other areas of my life.
Nice. Your talks, your 7-minute talks, do you consider that a part in like another episode in your podcast though?
Yeah, so like, well,
do you number your podcasts?
Yeah, I only started numbering them, like, I told Eric this too, so this might be helpful. Like, I think that the podcast, I view it as like a form of like self-expression, so I don't really follow a lot of like bloggers on how to like hack and optimize. Like, I've done it before sometimes because you look at the like plays and you're like, oh, I want to grow this. But for me personally, it's just like my way of networking, and I think of it as a long game. So I didn't start numbering my episodes, I think, until number 60, and that was only because I was like, oh wow, I should start numbering them, and like, why not? But I wasn't going to take the time to go back and number everyone. So like what I did was, when I had the Real Talk series, I would do like number 63, Real Talk 17, and then I would put the title.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I actually started my podcast with just me talking to my phone and giving all the tips and tricks that I learned from my own experience as a real estate investor. But I quickly found out that I didn't have that much to say. So after the 10th episode, I started making up stuff. Right, the content started being more boring. I had to do a lot of research on it because it's something I didn't know. It took up a lot of time. So instead of that, I started focusing more on doing in-person interviews, because everyone you talk to, they may do the exact same thing, but they don't do the same thing the exact same way. And everyone has their own unique story to tell as well. Also, like you're saying, once you have someone on your podcast as a guest, then they share it with their friends, so your audience explodes through that natural, organic sharing method.
Okay, let's talk about people you interview. So how do you look for the people you interview, and do you care more about like the name, like if they're bigger or not, or if, you know, what they bring to the table. Like maybe it could be some unknown person, but they can give you more value or whatever. Yeah, which one do you think is more important?
I think for me, like while it would be beneficial for you to get the bigger name people who have huge followings, and if they shout your stuff out, then you'll most likely be able to grow your followers a lot quicker. I don't really do that right now. You know, some of my guests, they might have a pretty big following, but in terms of being able to get those people, it does take a lot of like relationship building and getting those kinds of entrepreneurs. So for me, based on my content, based on what I'm looking for, is really the type of content that, you know, the person is going to be able to share. It's really about those really deep stories that, you know, has that like core foundation for other people to take notice and learn from and be able to implement that for their business or their life. And so that's really what I focus on. And for me, I think the reason why I don't really stress out about the podcast is because my whole goal is, at least as long as I help one person out in the world, then I'll be happy. Like for one person to come back to me one day, it's like, hey man, like I was able to start a multi-million-dollar business because I started listening to your podcast, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like it was worth it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also, how do you find those people to interview? Is it just like in your network, or do you reach out to new people?
Yeah, so obviously starting out, most of the people have been within my network. So we have a lot of contacts already in the business world. So those guys are already impressive. So I know some of their stories and wanted to be able to share that. And then the people who aren't in my network, I either ask, you know, people I interview if they have other people that they think would be good for the show. Part of what I want to do is, you know, also ask the audience of people or people that they would recommend that you want to hear from. And then I'm just, you know, there's been a few guests on my podcast where I've just come across their story on Facebook groups, and I was like, wow, you guys have a really interesting story. And so they've been willing to share that.
Yeah, I find most of everyone I interview through social media, except for like the initial episodes too. The initial episodes were a lot of like people I knew or like connections I just had through like social media. Then I just like ended up kind of getting recommendations, and just through doing more and more interviews, I just kind of learned like kind of who makes up the best stories. So initially I was interviewing a lot of like young people like around my age, but then I found like, you know, when you've only lived so long, there's only so much to tell. So then I started interviewing people who were like a little bit older, maybe like 28 and 30, and those people had like gone through their 20s and like had those experiences to talk about. And so, yeah, it was really good to, it was, no, not old, but old enough to like have some stuff to talk about. So yeah, now I just DM people. I DM so many people. Yeah, like the experiences and the people I've met through like DMs, honestly, it's just been so much fun. And like I will always DM people, even if I like see something that I like and it's not in my self-interest. Like if I see like, oh, this person founded this website and I think it's a really good website, I'll just DM them and be like, hey, like I really like your website, because I know how hard it is to continue to put out content. And so when someone reaches out, it's like means a lot. So I just do that.
Nice. See, shoot your shot and slide in the DMs.
Yeah.
Slide in the DMs.
So much.
So every person I've interviewed, I've actually known them in person. Met them one time either through the meetups I've gone to, working with them professionally, or at a convention. I mentioned I have a podcast and their stories seem very interesting. And I think they should share their story with more people. To be honest, the podcast that I run is actually very selfish because I find people that I want to learn from. I ask them the questions that I want to hear. And then my audience are people who are just like me. So they're like, oh yeah, he's asking the exact question that I want to listen to. And sometimes my friends they message me afterwards and said, hey, you didn't grill this guy into his numbers. Ask for more numbers next time. So I've been doing that with feedback. And just like you said, it's a really good feeling when someone comes up to you and says, hey man, I listened to your podcast. You've helped me out a lot. And I've had that experience already. So it's definitely a great feeling.
Cool. And then let's talk about the interviews, like the length of the interviews and the frequency of episodes. So how often do you guys post and how long are your episodes?
So my podcast is still relatively new. I've been shooting trying to keep it under 45 minutes or so. So I would say the average is about 40 minutes per episode. And I'm trying to put out about once a week as I go along. I think I heard, maybe it was from you, Tiffany, or someone else, that it's supposed to be like at least twice a week, but that's a lot of work right now, and there's other priorities in line before I could do that. So the whole goal is at least try to make as good quality as content as possible for every episode, because if I can't put out that much content, then try to keep it as high quality.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because like you can definitely put out 2 podcast episodes a week, but it's like to put out the content that associates with those podcast episodes takes a lot of time. So yeah, like if it's not realistic for you to put out 2 episodes a week, then I wouldn't do it, because you're also gonna have to like, or you don't have to, but if you're gonna have someone come on your show, then you want to create assets for them to share and like show them that like, you know, their time was valued enough for you to create something out of it. And so yeah, that's the thing. So I kind of learned that, I guess, not the hard way, because it was still a really fun time. So I was putting out an episode on Monday, and then I was live streaming on Wednesday, and then I was putting out the podcast from the live streams on a Friday. So it was like 3 days a week of kind of just centered around podcasting. And through that, I obviously like just learned how to live stream better, because you're just like doing it so much faster. And it was a good experience. And then as far as frequency, yeah, I think twice a week is good, but it depends on your free time. And again, like the actual editing of the episode does not take that long, but it's creating the videos from it that takes a long time.
How long are your episodes?
They're like usually like, yeah, I would say like 45 to 60 minutes.
Okay. Do you guys think it's better to have long episodes or like short 10-minute kind of easy to consume episodes?
That's why I introduced the live stream, because I felt like I needed some short form content. And so my interviews would be like 45 minutes, and then the live streams would be like maybe 20-30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I think you have to just get a feel for, you know, as you grow your audience, like what do they like. I just do 40 because that to me is like a perfect amount. That's like average commute in the Bay Area. And so it's like one episode, you know, from home to work. I mean, I've listened to other podcasts where it's like some guys have like 10-minute episodes, and it's just like, okay, like maybe I got like one little thing, but it's just like too short, and you're just like, I wish they, you know, talked more about it. So I think 40 minutes to me is still pretty good.
Okay.
You're definitely doing everything right. If your podcast is 45 minutes, how's your live stream only 25?
Because when you're live streaming, it's kind of hard to go for 45 minutes, because like you have another person there, and then you also have like people commenting, and it's a lot more pressure because you're having an audience. Versus like a podcast, you can talk to someone for 45 minutes, just the two of you. So I feel like that added element of the live stream, like it's harder to sustain long amounts of time, as well as like a live stream audience. They're not going to stay there for 45 minutes, because usually they're just getting the notification. They're either going to hop in for like maybe 10 minutes and then hop out, but hopefully you have enough like revolving traffic.
Cool. I thought it was like you're taking a live stream and then making that into the podcast, but
I am doing that too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had like similar to this, like the microphone stand, and then I had, it sounds complicated, but I had my microphone. It was plugged into my Zoom H4. I had the other microphone plugged into the Zoom H4 also. And so basically it was picking up the audio from the phone, and both were going to the Zoom H4. So on one SD card, I had my audio channel and had my guest audio channel. And from that, I just turned them into one audio channel, edited that, and then published it.
All right, we won't go into more detail on that later, but cool. What was the question?
About the frequency of episodes and length of interviews.
Okay, cool. So right now I'm very lazy. I just make sure that the episodes get released on time. So I do 2 a week, and they're about 45 to an hour long. I always book an hour-long session with my guests based on how much filler words they use, or if they say some smack talk, I have to cut that part out. So sometimes it becomes shorter, 35 minutes, but in general, it's about an hour long per episode. And I record a whole bunch. So I have maybe 8 in the can, which is like a whole month's worth of episodes.
So now let's talk about after you've published your episodes, like how you market it. So what are your best ways of growing your audience base?
I think both of them kind of touch upon it. But essentially, after release, I do try to make some content, you know, about the guests, or, you know, for the guests, you know, because most of these guys, they're also willing to help promote your episode as well, because it's promoting them. And so I, you know, take the time to go and make that content, like, you know, a short teaser, whether it's like 30 seconds or a minute long, and then provide that to them. And then so they'll blast it out to their network. But utilizing every channel, I think it's more of like a omni-channel presence is what they call it, and basically putting yourself out to every different channel as possible. So like, if you want, put it on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram Live, because even though you have like say 2,000 people in your network, 200 of your 2,000 will only use Instagram, 200 of that will be on Facebook, and so you want to make sure you can try to capture them, even though it'll overlap, and then pretty much just go from there.
Yeah, I just used all social media mostly, and it was definitely helpful. I just kind of stick to LinkedIn and Instagram because I found a lot of my guests were on Instagram, so I knew that they were gonna like repost on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn was kind of where my audience was, so I tried to just keep both running. Sometimes it can be kind of hard because if you're gonna put out content for a given platform, every platform has their own like thing, and so sometimes you have to even optimize the content for each platform. So going back into like knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into, if you're going to post on multiple platforms, sometimes it's better to make those small tweaks because they really do make a difference in how the content will perform.
Nice. Yeah, I don't use Instagram that much because Instagram only gives you one link, which is in your bio. So yeah,
Unless you have 10,000
unless you have 10,000 followers. I'm not that popular yet, so I don't have that. I use Facebook a lot, so I would obviously tag everybody and post a link, and it shows that beautiful profile, or the, what's it called, preview? Yeah, it shows a nice preview banner so you can click on it easily. And I want to create more stuff because that way your guests will be more inclined to share it, right? Right now, unfortunately, my promotional banner just has my ugly mug on it. They don't want to share that, right? So it's well worth it to spend some time doing that kind of stuff.
Aside from social media marketing, do you guys do any like SEO optimization with the titles? And also, do you guys do any guest podcasting, like trying to get on other podcasts related to you guys to get on theirs, get their audience?
Yeah, so SEO wise, and this is why when I first started, I thought it was important to transcribe the episode. And like for me, there's three types of learners, right? And it's audio, visual, and kinesthetic by touch. And so, audio is going to be through the podcast itself, and then visual are going to be for those that would rather read something. And so it's like, imagine if you're just kind of slacking off at work, you can't listen to the podcast, maybe you want to just like spend time reading it like during lunchtime or something. So what I do is I'll transcribe all of my episodes, put it on my website so people can actually just read through that in terms of content. And I think by doing that, it'll also just organically SEO itself through Google. Once you do your headers and subtitles and things like that, that'll go up there. And then one of the neat things that I do is any guest that I have, if they have a product or if they have a course, for instance, I'll try to incentivize my listeners with like discount codes and promotions and things like that. And so hopefully if you're looking for like a product and it's like, XYZ product discount code, maybe mine will show up in order to pretty much reward my listeners for it.
So for SEO, I don't do anything because I don't know. I just stick to what I know. I like social media stuff, so I just try and focus on that. But I think I would like to do that, and I would like to transcribe it. Maybe if I could get a virtual assistant, then I would probably have them do something like that, and that would be super beneficial. Someone gave me the idea to start posting the podcast episodes as LinkedIn articles, and that's an idea I really like, so I hope to do that one day. But again, it's sometimes you have to know how much like content you want to give to a certain guest, because that was the other thing too when I was posting so frequently. It's like I almost wanted to do more. I was even thinking about doing a secondary live stream, but it kind of got to the point where I was almost promoting something every day, and I felt like I wanted to have a time for the content to breathe and like sit on its own. And then as far as getting on other people's podcasts, that just kind of happens through connections I've made through social media, either just sliding in the DMs. And yeah, I had this thing where I was like DMing 5 people a day. Wow. And that was helpful, and that brought about a lot of cool opportunities. So if you have time, you should do that.
Wait, real quick, who do you DM? Like, do you find podcasts or podcasters, or like who? So
when I would live stream, people would comment or ask questions and say like, oh, this is good or something like that. And then I would like DM them, and I would have like a preset, like, oh, these are my links or whatever. Mm-hmm. Thanks for tuning in. And that was cool because like if they commented on the live stream, that means like they liked it. And then they'd be like, oh, thank you so much. Like, can you let me know when it's out? Because it would publish the next day. And then, yeah, I just DM whoever. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I don't do any SEO because I didn't know about it. I'm actually taking a page out of his book and gonna start transcribing the podcast because, you don't want to listen to all that stuff too. Sometimes you want just to have a quick refresher. You can go back in time and skim through the stuff. In terms of meeting people, I tell people about my podcast in person. So I actually host a meetup group as well. And through that, I let them know, hey, I have a podcast, check it out. When I go to conventions, same thing. And that's actually how I meet people who I get on my show.
So I feel like we covered a lot of questions. Maybe you guys can give some last words, any tips for newbies?
Yeah, I would just say don't really stress out about it. It's more of I guess when you get started, you don't want to like announce that you're starting a podcast and like be all about it, and then you record one episode, you launch it out, and then you just get stuck, or you weren't able to find like a second guest or third guest. And like that's gonna just make it harder because you got super excited to launch your first one, and then all of a sudden it's gonna take you like another month to like get a second episode released, and then so you kind of lose your momentum. And then so I would say, like, if you are starting out, pre-record or interview at least 3 to 4 people, so you have 4 episodes to go on, so you can release that once you have it, and that'll kind of get you set up for success down the road.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then for podcasting tips and tricks, you should join my podcast group on LinkedIn.
I'm in it. Yeah,
you can
Send me an invite through.
yeah, you can join it. Link in bio, and you can check it out. And yeah, it can be pretty useful. I mean, I just started as a place for people to just come together and ask questions, and I also share my own like tips and tricks that I've learned. And then as far as like gear, yeah, I had mentioned like kit.com is really helpful in terms of just creating your own gear, because as you podcast and people kind of start knowing that you podcast, they'll ask you questions on podcasting, and there's pretty much like standard questions like what mics are you using, what software you're using. And so if you can kind of just either create a guide to where it's custom to you and you can share that out, that'll save you a lot of time. So that's something I'm working on right now too.
I would say just do it, be unique. Not a lot of people are doing podcasting, so that's why it's worth your time to do it. And I wouldn't get too hung up on all the technical stuff. Just release something. Like, no one's going to really listen to your podcast for the first few episodes anyways. So don't sweat it too much. You will learn as you go.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. Hope you guys learned a lot about podcasting, and see you guys in another video.
Bye.
Bye.